Alrighty, hey there everybody. Welcome to this week's live training session. I know it's a couple days before Christmas, so Merry Christmas to all of those who celebrate. If not, happy belated Hanukkah. I know that was a couple weeks ago, and then I think Kwanzaa starts on Sunday, so if you celebrate that, happy Kwanzaa a little bit early. I thought I'd be a little bit festive today, obviously with my red sweatshirt on, but I know obviously we're focusing on health here today. So the big one, as far as something that I think is incredibly important, is getting the most out of your visit whenever you go to the doctor. And obviously that can be hard because of several things. One, time challenges. Sometimes the doctors end up behind, so the appointment time that they have scheduled, it ends up having less time because they're running behind, or you might have more questions than is can be asked in this specific time. So what I'm going to do today is sort of give you a guide through the best way to get the most out of going to the doctor. And this can be whether you're going to just a regular annual physical checkup, if you're going because you're sick, or if you're going to a specialist, or if you're at like urgent care or even the hospital. All of these things can be applied to that. And so today's video hopefully is not going to be too long, because I know it's right before Christmas, so you probably don't have a lot of time, but hopefully it's going to be packed with some valuable information here. So let's get started with this. And one of the big things when you go to the doctor is they're going to go over your health history. Obviously, if it's a doctor that you've been going to for a while, you've got some form of relationship. They should have your health history on file. If not, and it's a new doctor or new situation, such as obviously you're at the hospital, so you've never seen the doctor before, it's important to make sure that they know what your health history is. And this is huge because it will impact every aspect of your treatment from that point forward. Because obviously your health history is different from someone else, and as far as if you're going in with chest pain and you have a history of asthma versus you have a history of a pulmonary embolism, which is a blood clot in your lung, what the doctor is going to be screening for and looking for as far as treatment is going to shift dramatically. Obviously, asthma, it can be life-threatening if it's a severe asthma attack. If you have a blood clot in your lung, obviously that's hugely life-threatening. So that's why it's so important to make sure that the doctor knows what your health history is, because it's going to help them determine what they need to do as far as getting you the best correct treatment. So when we're talking about health history, there's a couple of things that we definitely need to talk about. You need to talk about any chronic conditions that you have, any previous surgeries that you have, obviously any allergies that you are allergic as far as medicines or certain things like latex. All of this is incredibly important to make sure that the doctor knows. And if you're experiencing new symptoms that are different from what you normally have, this is more for if you're going to your regular doctor visit versus obviously in the emergency room. You're most likely there because you're experiencing new worrisome symptoms. And so you also want to provide them with your medications you're taking, and because certain medications interact with other medications. And this, if they give you something that interacts with something you're already taking, it can have really bad outcomes. And this includes vitamins and supplements. So make sure when you're doing your medication list, you include those as well underneath your prescription medicines. Um, and then if you're going to your normal doctor's office visit, make sure you bring any of your current x-ray or lab work results. Especially if you're going to a specialist, because most likely they're not going to have access to that information. Your primary doctor should hopefully have at least your lab results, and maybe they don't have copies of x-rays, but they should have hopefully the report of what was interpreted by the radiologist. So all of this, it gives your doctor a clear picture of what's going on with you. That way they know, what they need to do to help you either get better or stay healthy. So that's so key. And I'm going to show you guys an awesome example of something that I've typed up here. It's for an example of a health log. And you should have one of these if you are going to the doctor. And it's easy to make it on the computer. So that way you can print it out anytime you're going to the doctor. Ideally, you should have a copy in your wallet or your purse. because this way, if emergency arises, it's there and it's accessible, so that way you can um, is for like emergency personnel, anybody can find it, and that way they know exactly your health history. And the nice thing about doing this means that you are in control of your health history as far as everything being compiled together. And this is a crucial element because if your primary care doctor might not have everything from a specialist, vice versa. If you go to a hospital and it's not in network, then your doctor's not going to have access to that. And so this is where by you being in charge of it, you have complete control. And then this way, when you go to any doctor, by having it something readily, easily accessible that they can keep, if it's a printed copy, if it's a handwritten copy, usually obviously they have a copier, they can make a copy and then give you back the original. But it's so important to have this down and make sure it stays updated. And at the bare minimum, you need to have at least your medication list and your allergies in your wallet or purse. But ideally, you should have something like this. And now let me bring it a little bit closer so you guys can see it. So as you can see, it says Health Log. It's going to have your name, your allergies, your medications, any of your previous diseases or surgeries. And this is chronic diseases. This isn't every single time you've had a cold. And then the year that you had it. And then as far as blood pressure and your lab work, obviously, depending on your goals, you're going to have, different things on here, but this is just an example of your low LDL, low density lipoprotein, HDL, high density, total cholesterol, but you can have other things on here like your blood sugar, A1Cs, all that stuff. And then if you have any doctors, like as far as their specialties, like a cardiologist or neurologist, you want to have their contact information on there, in addition to your primary care doctor, and then an emergency contact. So whoever that would be for you, whether it is your, significant other, whether it's another family member, whomever it is that you want to be contacted in the event that something's happened and you need help. So this is something that's real easy to type up, obviously. You don't have to get quite as fancy as I did. You just want to make sure everything's clear on there. And then at the bare minimum, you want to have at least this top section up here, where you've got your name, your allergies, and your medications. The rest of this is very important when you're going to the doctor. It'd be incredibly helpful if you're in the emergency room, but you need to have at least your medication list. And that is so important because, as I mentioned earlier, you need to know what you're on, so that way we as healthcare individuals, when we're trying to help you, know what we can or can't give you. Um, so now that you have all that, as far as your medical history goes, once you go to the doctor, of course, you get into the office, you've given this to the medical assistant, nurse, or the doctor, and they're going to put it in your file. The next thing they're going to do is, after they talk to you and review all this and review what your current symptoms are, most likely they're going to give you instructions on what they want you to do next. And this is true whether you're going for a well checkup or whether you're going for a sick visit. And the big thing with when doctors give instructions, and part of it is it's just that A, they're usually in a hurry. B, they're speaking medical lingo, and that's just natural because it's part of their everyday life. Unfortunately, this is where a significant amount of communication breaks down between doctors and patients. Obviously, most patients don't necessarily understand medical lingo the way a doctor is going over it. So, and many patients don't feel comfortable asking questions of the doctor. But this is such a critical element of going to a doctor's appointment. If you don't understand something, you need to let your doctor know. Because if you don't understand what you're supposed to do, then your doctor's not going to know whether or not what they're prescribed as far as either medication, an action they want you to take. If you don't do it because you don't understand the instructions, then they're not going to know whether or not it would help you. And so this is such an important element of when you're in that doctor's office visit, is making sure you're asking questions. If you don't understand something, let your doctor know. Ask for written material that you can take home and review later. That way you've got something to follow up on as far as what the doctor's telling you in person. And another thing that's great option is ask your doctor if you can record them on your phone, or if you have another recording device. That way you can play it back later and make sure you fully understand what the instructions are that they gave you. And option, if you have a family member or friend, bring them with you. Have them take notes. Um, this is so key because that way you're focused on the doctor and what they're telling you. They're able to take notes for you that you're able to look at later. And all of these things are so key to making sure that you understand what is being told to you as far as what you need to do. Another important element of this is that if you have any questions before you go to the doctor's office, write them down. Make sure that you have them, handy, so that way you can ask your doctor. Make sure you put down the most important questions, the ones you definitely want to get an answer to first. So that way, if the doctor does run out of time, at least you know you've got those answered. And then the other part of this is that if you have questions that were not answered during the appointment with the doctor and they have to go on to do another appointment, ask to speak to either the nurse practitioner, the physician assistant, the registered nurse, someone else who you can ask those questions to. Most likely they'll be able to give you an answer. And if not, then they will make a note of it and make sure that the doctor gives you a call back when the doctor has a moment. So this is so important so that way you understand what you're supposed to be doing in order to, either get better or stay healthy, whatever the doctor wants you to do. And that way you can start that process, sooner rather than later. And the only way you're going to be able to do that, though, is if you understand what the doctor's telling you to do. And if you don't, that's where asking questions is so important, because if you need to know this in order to take charge of your health, right? And that's the big essential thing here is being in charge of your health, being your own health advocate, essentially. You're advocating for yourself is when it comes to your health. Sort of rhymes there, but you definitely want to be able to do that. And the only way to do that is if you're fully informed as far as everything. And so once you get through, the initial part of the beginning where that's the interview and then you get instructions, next comes the follow-up section of the appointment. And this usually happens after your appointment. So you're not actually at the doctor's office, but this is a crucial element of the process. And what this is where you've had test work, lab work, x-rays, something done, and you haven't gotten the results in 3 to 5 days after, you might want to call your doctor's office, find out, hey, did the results come in? And the big thing here to remember is that sometimes if your results, like your lab work, is within normal range, your doctor might not necessarily call you. Typically, they're going to only call you if something's abnormal and they need you to do something. This is why if you haven't heard anything, it can be helpful to call, make sure that they've gotten the results and that, everything's okay. And then the other big thing here is if you can't remember the instructions you were given, call the doctor's office. The nurse or the medical assistant, someone can call you back with what those instructions were, and therefore you know what you're supposed to be doing. And if you went to the doctors because you're sick, big thing here is if you're not getting any better after following their treatment that they've outlined for you, then you need to give them a call and say, hey, I've been doing this, and this that you recommended. This is what I'm still feeling. Or these are the new symptoms that I've got. What should I do next? And they should be able to guide you on that process. So that way, obviously, the whole point of that is to get you back to feeling your healthy self. So the other thing here is if you're prescribed a new medication, this is really, really important because you should be asking your doctor, A, what's the purpose of the medicine? You should find out, what are any of the side effects, whether intended, that can happen, or worrisome side effects. And then that way, if you have any of these, then okay, I should be reaching out to my doctor to tell them, hey, I've got these side effects. Or you have what's the intended results, then okay, it's working. Obviously, if you have anything such as an allergic reaction where you're having itching or hives or anything like that, shortness of breath, you need to go to the emergency room because that's a severe reaction. If you have mild allergic reaction, you need to call your doctor and let them know. Typically, what they're going to have you do is they will devise a plan to have you stop that particular medicine and then switch to something else. And the reason why you don't want to stop completely without talking to your doctor is because some medications, when you do that, can actually cause severe reactions, and you don't want to experience that. And this is why, obviously, I don't know what medicines you're on, so that's why talking to your doctor is so important before you start or stop any medication. And that is a key element of when you're being prescribed medicine, is you need to know what's the intended purpose, what side effects you're looking for, and then, if something goes wrong, then when you should be contacting your doctor. Um, so all of these elements, starting from your health history to sitting down with your doctor and discussing, what your appointment's for, whether it's a well check, whether it's a sick check, whatever it is, getting instructions from your doctor, clarifying any questions you have, doing the follow-up as far as calling back in, making sure you have your lab work results, making sure that you understand all the instructions. If you prescribe new medicines, making sure you understand what they're used for. All of these things make up the important part of your health in general, but your past health history and your current health status. And by being in control of all these things, that way by knowing it, you're in control. And when you're in control, then you're more likely to have better outcomes and better overall health. And that is what the essential thing is with this concept is you want to have control of your overall health. You want to be in charge. And by taking all these steps, that's what you're going to be able to do. And so, as I mentioned, if you guys are interested in me putting my copy of the little health blog that I created up in the group, so that way you can have access to it, download it, and therefore then edit it, let me know. Otherwise, thank you guys for joining me today. It was a brief session, but hopefully packed with some incredible information that you guys can use. And I know with Christmas coming up, I'm not quite sure when next week's training is going to be, thinking of probably either Wednesday or Thursday. So until then, you guys have a great Christmas, and I will see you next week, and stay healthy.